Welcome to the InStory show. I'm Devorah Spilman, your host, and our theme this season is what does it mean to expand into a new story? And how do you come out of hiding and dare to be seen for who you really are by saying yes to your soul and telling your story? So today I'm thrilled to welcome Sara Elise. Hi, Sara.
Hi, Devorah. Nice to meet you. So thank you for having me here today.
So I'm excited to dive in. I'm going to read a little bit about Sara and then we will get started. Sara Elise is an evolutionary catalyst who uses the language of astrology in service to awakening. She awakens transformation and universal alignment. Initiated into astrology during her awakening in 1996, Sara spent 20 years being quote unquote normal, as in corporate marketing and motherhood, until being called back to service in 2014. Since then, Sara has been devoted to translating the wisdom of the celestial spheres as a transpersonal therapist, teacher, mystic, and astrologer. All right, so I'm going to ask you, like I ask everyone else, what does expanding into a new story mean to you?
Well, because I am an astrologer who practices the art of awakening and expansion, to me, I feel as though the story of my life, my hero's journey, is written in my birth chart. And for me, expanding into the greater part of my story or my highest potential or my highest self or rising back to God or lifting up into my highest possibility is about understanding myself, understanding the matrix of my own structure, my personality, my destiny, my karma, my past, my present, and my potential future. And by telling the whole story of my everything from my past life story to my present and also the future, I re-narrate my reality from a place of objective sovereignty so that I can choose what part of my story I want to be aligned to, right? Because we all have different parts of our stories in us. We have sad stories, we have happy stories, we have memories, we have hopes and dreams. And I can read all of that in my birth chart. And the more I understand about myself, the more I can choose to align with the story that's in my highest good, as there are always choices to be made in every moment.
Right. So, like, I know that astrology was not always the main thing you did in the world, and I would love to hear kind of your story of how do you put this more soul-driven work first in your life? Like, what are some of the turning point moments that have led you to being able to do this work?
Well, first of all, I had a massive awakening when I was 21 years old, and my higher self came into my body and I reintegrated with it. So that was a big thing. It was very strange because I was raised very atheistic. I was raised by an academic and an artist, and I had absolutely no spiritual upbringing. Let me just say that. I was very mental, yeah, very academic.
But
And
what
when I
happened to you, and how did you believe it if you were very academic? Like,
Well, I
what actually
believed it because it happened to me. It was kind of undeniable when Kundalini shot up my spine and blasted out the top of my head, and my third eye opened, and I started to see multidimensionally, and I started to experience telepathy, and I started to remember my past lives, and
Oh,
all of it came online. I started to see energy. It was a
wow.
big thing. It was a very massive thing that happened to me. And then in my life at that time, a couple of teachers came my way. One was named Constantine Darling from New York City, and one was named Deborah Silverman. And I started working with both of them. Deborah taught me astrology, and Constantine taught me meditation. So I learned to discipline and focus and control my body, my mind, and I learned the art of astrology. So there was that happened. But then I like in my bios, I kind of came back into society and just went back to sleep a little bit. I realized I had to make money, I had to be normal. So I thought, okay, what am I going to do? And I seem to have some great skills in business. I don't know where they came from, but I decided to get a commerce degree, and I ended up graduating at the top of my class from a marketing degree. And I got recruited by a really big company, and I started working in brand management for big $1 billion brands. And I did that for a while until I started having children. And when I started having children, I was like, I don't know if I really care anymore about brands or sales or any of, and I kind of slowly started to eke my way out of the corporate sphere, and I became a stay-at-home mother for about a decade. And then, to be honest with you, I re-engaged with astrology kind of in my mid 30s. I started having all these past life memories come through, and I was like, oh crap, it's back. What am I going to I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. I was like so lonely and I had no one to talk to. And so I found this wonderful, Deborah was always my friend, like she was always in my life, but I found another mentor at that time, a man named Alan Oken, who is an esoteric astrologer. And I started working with Alan, and then Deborah started her online school, and I kind of came back into her ecosystem, and I started teaching for her, and I slowly started to do astrology readings, and I kind of started fishing around it. And to be honest, the reason why I really gave myself to astrology is because my marriage fell apart. And in 2017, my marriage was very karmic. I love my ex-husband. He is a soulmate, and we were extremely bad together, very abusive, toxic, extremely painful. And spirit shoved me out of that marriage. I didn't really have a choice. If I wanted to grow, I had to grow out of it. And I didn't have any money because I'd been a stay-at-home mother, and I didn't want to take anything from him. I didn't want to hurt him. I didn't want to take child support or alimony. So I knew I needed to get my shit together, so to speak. So I put myself back into university, to this women returning to the work program at the Rotman School of Business here in Toronto, which is one of the top business schools in the country. And I was all ready to put my suit back on and go back to work, right? Go get a job at the bank or something. I was like, you know what? By the end of it, we had to do this coming out where we had to present ourselves to the group. This is who I am, like the elevator pitch of our professional. And I got up in front of the group, in front of 30 women in this wonderful elite university in Canada. And I said, I am going to be an astrologer. I am a professional astrologer. Everyone just like looked at me like no one understood at all what was happening. I never got invited to any of their like post alumni drinks or anything. Like I think I was like at that point it was obvious I didn't really fit in. But I did. I started building my business, and I really gave it my all, and I disciplined myself, and I focused. And since 2020, I've been a full-time practicing evolutionary astrologer. It's all I do. I support 3 children. I'm a single mom, and I've done it all by myself and with the help of God. So I think the most important thing is that when I was a young girl going through my awakening, I was given a vision, and the vision became my raison d'être, the reason for my being. And what I was shown was that we all have a divine line, like a central core axis of light, which is our essence. It's our vibrational frequency. It is the creation from the creator that we are meant to be. It's our uniqueness. And most of us in this world that we live in, because we've been traumatized from a very early age, most of us are broken out of the divine line. The divine line never goes anywhere. It's always there. But because we get broken out of our alignment, we get caught, we get blocked, and we get trapped in beliefs, limiting beliefs, things like lack, for instance, competition, greed, all of these limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough, or I'm better than others, or I need to take this away from you to survive. And what I was shown, I was given a spiritual economy lesson. I was shown what would happen if everybody on the planet just stood up. And I was shown that resources would distribute perfectly, and that there was enough on this planet for absolutely everybody, but that the divine wants us to be abundant, and that all we have to do is have the courage to rise up in our alignment in our higher self and stand up. It's just literally as simple as standing up. And that small thing is so big. It's such a big deal, right? When you ask me about what it means to tell a new story, I just want to tell my story. I want to tell my story of my blueprint, of my healthiest, most beautiful, most aligned blueprint, because that's how I know that everything I need comes to me.
Right, right. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that so much, and I can feel the power of it, and the simplicity of that image. I do so much work with image and metaphor. So that image that everyone has this divine line and that we're
Mhm.
just broken away from it, it's such a visceral feeling. And then to simply stand, and like in Hebrew there's two words for standing. There's regular standing and there's deep standing. So like when the Jewish people received the Torah, it's called nitzavim, which is this other deeper kind of standing, and that's when
Oh,
they're receiving this ultimate wisdom, and it's called standing in that
yeah.
way. And it makes me think about that, this idea that you're standing in your story, that it's that you're in that alignment for yourself. I just think that's so powerful. And the other thing I'll share with you is that I have, at times when I have been really worried about some part of my life, I've had this feeling like I don't want to feel like everything's just hanging by a thin thread. And one day when I was walking, I got such a powerful image. It's like, no, no, it's not that it's just hanging by a thin thread. It's hanging, it's connected to by a silver thread of God's presence that is unbreakable.
Oh, I love it.
I was like, and it was even the image that the entire universe is held up by a silver thread of God's presence that is unbreakable. And I was like, well, it feels a lot better. Right? So, but it's that same
Yeah.
image of this flow from above that is
Uh-huh.
alignment. And so I think that's just such a significant image for people
Yeah.
to grab hold of and to tune in, where those of you watching, when have you had a similar feeling or image? Because
Yeah.
it's a very universal description of a truth,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I saw it in one way, someone in, so, all right. So I want you to take us a little bit into what is evolutionary astrology, and then into some of what we talked about before about what's happening right around the time of the summit, which is the beginning of May.
Yeah. Evolutionary astrology, as far as I'm practicing it, I don't know what other people do with it. I'm like, gosh, um, the way it works for me is that we all have a story. Okay. It's kind of perfect that I met you. We all have a story. We all have a hero's journey that we're here to live. We have an entry, we have an exit, we have a plan. And at the entry, we come in with a big backpack full of karma and experiences and memories. Our astral field is full of personality quirks. And, there's a little bit of this feeling, and there's this fear here that's completely irrational. And we choose our entry to facilitate our growth. And as we start our journey, first of all, we have to deal with the karma that we've come in with. So all of us have a sorry story. All of us have a painful story. All of us have a pattern or a block or a pothole that we fall into again and again and again, right? We all have something we have to take responsibility for. We all have something in our lower self. We all have to go down into the lower self and understand what's going on under the surface. And we have to account for that. But then we also have a high story, a way that we can lift up into our higher self. We have a mission, we have a goal, we have somewhere we're going. And my guides have clearly told me that we have to go down to go up.
Mhm.
So life becomes a lemniscat or a figure eight. And in the chart, we can see that figure eight. We can look at the story. I can see the karma, I can see the mission. I can see the start, I can see the finish. And I can see how each individual is on their path somehow along the road, working it out. And when I meet with someone, I can feel, first of all, I always get their story. I get that, like, they tell me their story. There's like a 30-40 minute intake of storytelling, sometimes even more than an hour, where they give me where I take them back through their life, and we look at how things have happened so that we can get the really clear, details. And then we try to find the block in the flow, or the place, like the place where they're at now, and how we can reconcile the below with the above, or the down with the up, and how we can get them moving more fluidly toward the future, how they can at least conceptualize it. Like at the beginning, when I was saying, if you know what your story is, you can tell it by choice, right? Like you're not just like doing it unconsciously, like you stand up in the story and you take control, or you have more sovereignty. You can live it with more sovereignty. You can stand up in your divine line and own yourself more completely. So I truly believe that we don't ever want something that's not ours already, right? Like I think desire, we've been trained to be very wary of desire. We've been trained to block our desires, or to kind of, I don't know, just not trust them. But ultimately, we just want what we are. We just want ourselves. And we can trust ourselves. We really can. And we have to learn how to figure that out. So astrology for me is that. It's that affirmation. You know, it's helping someone understand themselves. I should never tell them anything they don't already know. Like if I tell them something they don't know, they should chuck it. Right? It's just, I'm translating their story to them. I'm singing the song of them back to them so that they can be free. That's it.
Yeah. I think that it's such a deep work to kind of see how you can move through your old story into a new one. But it's true, you have to see it to let it go. Otherwise, it just seems to be how it is.
That's right. Exactly. You have to see it. And the second you see it, it's like it doesn't have the power over you anymore. It dissolves, or it releases something. It's
I like to think
magic.
of it, I like to think of it, your resistance or your old story. I like to think of it as soon as you see it, because resistance hates to be seen. It's like pouring water on the Wicked Witch of the West. I'm
Yes.
happy,
I love that. I love that.
Right.
That's great.
So take us a little bit into the times that we're in, because when we were talking to prepare for the interview, you said some things about storytelling and like that, and I was like, okay,
Yes.
talk about that.
Well, you are a natural storyteller because you are a Gemini rising. So your soul is here to tell us stories and to talk and to connect and to share information and to be everybody's best friend. And that's the truth. I'm also a Gemini rising, by the way, so we share this. And the planet Uranus is moving into the archetype of Gemini on May 2nd, right around the beginning of May. So I think your summit starts on May 4th, meaning this interview will play right as Uranus has moved into Gemini.
Right.
And Uranus goes through one whole sign every 7 years or so. And when it goes through a sign, it's almost as though we are liberating that part of ourselves, or we are finding the higher frequency of that part of ourselves. So we're moving into a time where it's going to be very important for us to learn how to listen to our divine line, our own story, to be able to tell our own story, because there's going to be a cacophony or a proliferation of information. Like Uranus and Gemini is going to bring TMI to the max. I keep thinking about these deep fakes, about going on my Instagram. I used to really like going on Instagram. Now I don't even know what's real anymore. I can't even tell what's real. And when I go on there, it's just like sometimes when I listen to something, I feel like I feel like this horrible feeling, right? And I feel like it's hurting me. So I feel like this time that we're moving into, we're going to be all of us very sensitive to information, sensitive to the information, to the data, to the conversations. There's going to be a lot of noise, and we have to get really comfortable with finding what our authentic voice sounds like, our authentic frequency, so that we can find each other, frequency match with each other, and know what information is meant for us. Because we can't take in as much information as is coming, and if we try to, it'll blow us out, right? So that's sort of what I feel like we're on the precipice of. Uranus crept into Gemini last year for about a minute, like last July, August, September, And so there was a moment where it kind of came in and then it shut back, went back into Taurus. But in May, it comes in for 7 years. So we're gonna be in for a wild ride.
But I think what you're saying makes me think about how, at least from my experience, when you're connected to what I call your soul story, which is like this line that you're talking about, it changes the wild ride to not so wild.
Absolutely. That's
You
it.
become able to have this clear center while like you're not thrown off your center by the wildness, and then you become able to lead with that. I like to call it lead with your light and lead in your lane, right? And
Yeah.
so what I feel like you're saying is that we're going to have better access to how to connect it's that higher conscious, that alignment to a way to tell your story, like how to express it. So like you said, someone else can feel it, right?
Hmm.
Which is part of what I love about summits is part of how we find each other,
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
right? Um, so maybe share just another couple of things about um, maybe tell us a little bit about the whole thing with the North Node, because that's going to be part of your free gift. But talk a little bit about some other pieces of astrology for maybe people who don't know what
Hmm.
the different things to look for are, because I think that what you're saying is like, if you can see this other picture, it will help you to feel that alignment with your own story.
So the story, I mean, really, if you have a somewhat spiritual audience, I think we're all familiar with the concept that we're all one, that at some level of consciousness we're all connected. There's, that we can ascend to, lighter and lighter frequencies. But we're here in a denser frequency. We're here in a body called me. I'm a separate person called Sara, right? So even if at some level we're one, I have an experience in my body of being separate. And that experience is because I have a moon. I have an inner ability to reflect upon myself internally. The nodes of the moon in the chart, the south node and the north node, define the hero's journey that each individual is on in this lifetime. And the moon inside, the way they reflect upon themselves as a separate person, as a separate me, that moon goes on the journey from the south to the north node. It's like a little adventure. And the moon goes on the journey, on the
So
hero's
do you
journey.
have to know what your moon is? Like if I know my sun
You
sign is
don't need to know what your
Scorpio.
moon is. Absolutely. You
Oh,
do not need to know
oh,
what your moon is, but it really helps to know what your nodal axis is. What is your
okay,
south node? What is your north node? Where are you coming from? Where are you going to?
okay.
As a very famous astrologer, Stephen Forrest, once said, the south node is the bottle, the north node is the meeting. Meaning, we have problems at the south node. Usually it sucks there. Usually we've got some struggles. But when we move to the north node, things turn out okay. Things get better. We heal, we whole. So there's this line between them. There's a tension line always in your psyche between these things because we always have the whole story in us all at once. And we are always somewhere along the line of tension at any one given time. So it's a very simple formula. And the free gift or the document that I've created helps you find out what your nodal axis is and gives you a little blurb about it to help you describe what it might feel like to you. Of course, this is, to really understand it, you have to get an actual customized reading because it's not, you can't just, you can't just, it's not one size fits all. Everyone is a snowflake, right? There are no two people the same or no two stories the same. But it's a nice start. You can start to meditate, you can contemplate, you can imagine, you can dream into your own story using this structure. It's one entry point. One entry
No,
point.
I like it because as an uninitiated astrology type, right? I asked you, how do I do this? And I loved it. It was so fun. So now when you get the free gift, you have a link where you can go find out what your North Node is because
Mhm.
I didn't know, right? And I know, okay, I know my sun sign is Scorpio. Well, it turns out Sarah looked it up for me that my North Node's also Scorpio. I said, well, is it that true for everyone? She said, no, no, it's not true. And I was
No, it's not true for everyone. You have a south node of Taurus and a north node of Scorpio. In fact, our nodes are exact conjunct, Devorah.
oh,
Yeah. I have a south node that is 1 degree away from yours, and a north node that is one. I know, isn't that crazy? I think that we're destined to be friends because seriously, I've never, ever, ever, I've never seen that before. And they're also in the same houses of the chart. Like it's kind of weird, actually. It's a little bit weird. But with a south node of Taurus, and it's in the 12th house of the mystic. So you have a south node in the 12th house of the mystic. Okay. So you're coming from the mystical house in the chart and you're moving into service. You're moving into embodiment. A south node of Taurus is very simple. It's very gentle. It's very quiet. It's almost, there can be a little bit of limitation in a south node of Taurus. There can be, I don't need very much. I just need enough. Nope. I'm happy up here. I'm happy in my mountaintop. I don't want to leave. I'm really comfortable. Nothing's bothering me. I'm going to stay safe. I'm shutting out the noise of the world. But your soul keeps calling you into your body and it calling you into service and calling you into bigger and bigger and bigger containers where you have to face more and more and more intensity and you have to get more and more and more powerful and you have to hold more and more and more for all of us and you have to be louder and louder and louder and louder. And like there's this part of you in the 12th house, it must be like, I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but I'm not going to get into all the details. But what does that feel like for you? How does that feel?
Well, you know what I think it is that I can feel the truth of holding these two different energies because I feel, especially being Jewish, we're always being taught to hold these two kind of polar energies. And so, like, I'm very expressive and talkative and that, but I also hold a sense of the value of the small,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
right? The personal, the one the deep connection rather than the vast expanse of communication like to the masses. I like that personal connection, but there's also the call to expand, right? That's why I call this expanding into a new story. So I think that's what I feel is that I always have talking about, okay, we're going to bring in the mystical Jewish things now and the mystical, like I like to joke that the mystical is kind of the same in all of our religions. It's just as it comes into religion, it dresses in clothing and words and it gets dressed, right? And like I love the clothing of my Jewish life, but when I teach it, I go often into the mystical or the archetypal stories, which everyone can relate to. And but this idea that I just feel very inspired when you said that we're moving into a time where stories are going to be more, I don't know, maybe available or central. Because I think that when people come from their story, it we can feel more compassion, we can feel more empathy, we can feel more connection, even if I come from a completely different point of view. But if you're telling me your story as opposed to just ranting about a position about something, if you're
Mm,
telling me your story, then I'm like, oh, wow, I could relate to that. My
mm,
story that's like your story is this, right?
mm,
So there's something about being able to tell our stories that changes the way we connect. And so the fact that that's coming more, like I used to say, like, I think as Jewish people, we healed ourselves from the Holocaust by telling our story over and over and over
mm.
and over. Again, there's a million books on it
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there's something about telling your story till it expands into a new story. So you
yeah.
just kind of confirmed what I think.
Well, you definitely live your life in service as well, right? That's your devotion. You're here to help us with transformation of some kind or another.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you're transforming the stories that we tell, you're transforming the way we talk to ourselves, right?
Right.
Because so many of our stories can, if we keep them secret, they can be very negative and very harmful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes we have to air those stories out and recontextualize them from the perspective of the higher self. When the higher self can look with compassion on the whole life we've lived and the story we've lived and the trauma we've experienced and the lessons we've learned and see the whole thing all as one, then we become a jovial storyteller who's generous and free spirited versus I'm identifying with my story. My story traumatizes me. I can't get it out of my head. It's like a repeat,
Right.
and it hurts me. So that like liberating from that horrible inner voice is something that I think you do really well for people, I would imagine, especially with this chart of yours.
Yes, I do. You are so right. Oh, it's so much fun to hear what you have to say. And it's fun to have someone see you in this way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's so important to be seen. And it's true. Like, when people come into my world, we clear those old stories so that
Yeah.
then you can be seen for who you really are. That
Yeah.
sense of being able to come out and be seen by people who value you for who you really are.
The
God, say
authentic
people,
self. Yeah.
right, people carry the wrong audience around in their heads. So we're finding each other now, and it is really making a big difference. So,
It
all
is. It
right.
is. It is.
All right, people, get Sarah's free gift. Find out what your North Node is, read what it says, practice that meditation, go to her website. You'll see a lot of other options of how to take a step forward, because I can tell you, I can feel the power of the work she does. We have felt that connection just in preparing for the interview, um, and and just what has come out for us. Trust that in yourselves, that you are here for a reason. If you're listening to us, that you have an alignment to create a story to share, that there's something powerful calling you forward, and just take those steps forward and see where it leads you. So, all right, Sarah, just before we wrap up, leave us with a couple of last thoughts.
It's not fair. Last thoughts. I hope the winter's over soon. It's getting really awful. I think this is the worst winter we've had.
But we all have personal weather too, I like to joke about. So it's like, let's may be a blessing for all of us that we're coming out of winter and into spring.
Yes, may this be a blessing. By the time this goes on air, we will all be frolicking in the sunlight, enjoying ourselves in the sun, and we will be so grateful for it. Oh my goodness, it's been a long, hard one, hasn't it?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So
blessings to everybody. And
yeah.
thank you for your time, Devorah. I really appreciate your inviting me here today.
Well, it is a real pleasure. And I want to encourage all of you, get the free gift, trust the calling of your soul. And as I always say in farewell, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, folks.